Crashers Space today. I have a little presentation. I've been shopping around with some other groups and whatnot, but wanting to talk, like Sarah said, a little bit about diversion and what that looks like from a homelessness and housing perspective, and what we mean when we use that term within that same context. And then I have a little bit of information about two different projects that are operating in a handful of communities across the state, that I'll dig into a little bit about, like what those are and how they espouse these values and how those are being utilized to leverage housing goals and outcomes for young people across Washington. So, starting with this like idea of diversion and what it means, right? I mean, literally to divert is to like find an alternate path. So a lot of times when I host certification trainings for the projects that I help manage in Washington, I ask a question of folks who are attending that, like, what is that? What does diversion mean? Why are we here? Like, what are we talking about? And a lot of folks internalize the concept of diversion as like diverting a young person away from a homelessness experience, which, if a diversion conversation is successful, is definitely the goal. But when we talk about diversion in a literal sense, what we mean is, how are we diverting young people away from the homeless crisis response system as it is operating, namely those projects that have been propped up in communities um, to help provide housing, that are housing programs specifically. So, like rapid rehousing programs, transitional housing programs, permanent supportive housing programs, which have been operating in communities for quite some time and have been able to help a lot of people out. But we know that that coordinated entry system and those housing projects that are accessible through a coordinated entry type system are simply unable to meet the need and capacity. So, as many young people as are supported through that process, even more are left behind. And so, how are we as communities bringing in additional resources that can act as an alternative pathway? Really, what we're trying to do with projects and diversion philosophies are like, how do we build the capacity of the community uh, to be able to serve more young people and ensure that more young people are reaching their housing goals. So this idea that providing people experiencing housing instability with support in order to creatively find housing outcomes that are outside of that homelessness system means that fewer people will ultimately be experiencing homelessness. So when we talk about diversion, that's the thing we're diverting young people from. Um, but that process itself really comes down to a quality case management interaction. I've been to diversion trainings in the past, um, where there was someone who had been working in the community for, gosh, like 20 or 30 years. And when the trainers were talking about like what is diversion, I overheard her say something like, "So wait, this is just good case management." And in fact, that's really what we're talking about: is how are we utilizing the best practices that folks who are in the professional field of like human support, like how are we leveraging those best practices of like having a client-centered approach and coming from a strength-based perspective, coming from a place of trauma-informed care and utilizing the philosophies of harm reduction, and on, active listening, motivational interviewing, all of these best practices that we talk about a lot in human services. How are we putting those into an intentional package and ensuring that young people are getting the best uh, interaction that they can and have the best conversation towards a realistic outcome? I think that those concepts and philosophies are have been taught to us a lot, but when we're for a lot of folks who are working in like the homeless crisis response system, we tend to default to, well, what resources there that I can make a connection for you with? And what we want to do with diversion is try to break that habit that's been formed for a lot of us over time and get back to basics. And how are we like sitting down with someone, having a conversation, finding out where they're at and where they want to go and what we need to do to get there, and having this diversion practice and this diversion conversation really be the forefront of where our interactions with young people start and end from. Um, coupled with the resources in order to remove financial barriers to those creative housing conversations, is really where we see a lot of momentum build from. So again, just starting from an exploratory strength-based conversation, and getting down to like what's going to work. Well, when we talk about diversion, we're talking about like any housing stability, any plan leading to a higher degree of housing stability is a successful outcome. And again, that's pretty unique compared to a lot of the housing resources available um, in the past, where rapid rehousing, you got to have a lease, you got to move in by yourself. Transitional housing are often very independent, right? A lot of these other resources that you haven't been able to like live with a family member or a friend, or the sense of community oftentimes gets severed. So a lot of what young people are wanting, and in some instances even needing, isn't even necessarily an option through some of those more historic housing programs that we've seen operating in our community. So how do we get back to creating those, making those available and accessible again? So creative idea generation is a big part of it, and we're looking to remove any immediate barriers because we want young people to be able to achieve their housing outcomes now, right? So if their ultimate goal is something that's not immediately achievable, like what kind of baby steps are we going to take along the way, and how do we help support that stability increase right here, right now? The other big thing is that through the diversion practice and diversion conversation that we talk about a lot in this philosophy, is that we as like human service providers are familiar with resources, and we have our own lived experiences, and we also make sure that the recognition of the young person's lived experiences and their strengths and their skills and their resources that they also have are coming together in tandem. So we're really trying to flatten power dynamics that come into play when young people are connecting with human services in our communities, and recognizing that we're both just people who are living in this community, and we want to do what we can to help each other out. And we're both coming with different skill sets, different connection points, and different ways to meet that end. So how do we make sure that everything's being leveraged in order to come up with a solution that's going to work for the young person the best we can with the resources we've got currently? So essentially, if we're coming from that place of espousing all those best practices and really putting the conversation first and putting the young person first, it's creating an opportunity for us to really center justice in the services that we're offering and providing, recognizing that BIPOC and or LGBTQIA2S plus young people experience homelessness at a higher rate than their cis heterosexual white peers. We want to be able to create a resource that's also going to address the needs of those communities who are often overrepresented and underserved by the system as it currently operates. It allows us to honor those strengths. It allows us to get really exploratory and creative in finding like what is possible and dwelling in that optimism of opportunity and possibility, and allows us to be super creative. And ultimately, our goal is that we lean into this idea here that not only is knowledge power, but knowledge shared is power multiplied. So as young people are sharing knowledge with us, as we're sharing knowledge with them, we're creating a stronger community bond, and we're also creating a stronger outcome and possibility. So at the end of the day, that's really what diversion is. It's really centered around those conversations, but making sure we're putting our money where our mouths are, and that we are really leaning into a lot of these values and ideas that we talk about, and that we're being really intentional about deploying them in a specific way. The projects that I want to give you all a little bit of a sneak preview in are, I think, even a little bit more unique than other diversion projects in that they operate on a centralized model. So what that means is these projects come with flexible funding in each of the communities in which they operate. We'll see that here in a minute too. So the money is held by an organization in the community. We refer to them as fiscal administrators. But unlike other housing and homelessness projects, in order to access those funds on behalf of the young people you're working with, you don't have to work at that organization. So, for example, in Spokane, Volunteers of America holds those funds But anyone in the community can attend the certification trainings that I mentioned earlier. And as long as they're having these creative housing diversion conversations, they can access those funds to remove financial barriers that come up. So if a young person can, instead of sleeping in a shelter, stay with their grandma who's on a fixed income for the next 6 months, and grandma would love to have them there, but it's the financial burden of that is going to put grandma over the edge. Like, here are flexible housing dollars we can access to support that relationship in fostering, so that young person has a launching off point for whatever their next step is, whatever their future goals are, and how we as a community can support them through that. And so through the centralized model, we're creating opportunities not only for creative housing solutions, but also for community partners who tend to not have as much access to dollars for housing solutions available to them. Like McKinney-Vento liaisons, those of you who are working in mental behavioral health organizations, folks who are working in smaller BIPOC or LGBTQIA2S plus community organizations, oftentimes are either underfunded or don't have dollars that are earmarked for housing solutions specifically, but are oftentimes working with young people and talking to them about their housing goals and are able to help them flesh out a plan and an idea. Now those dollars are available for them in community in order to remove those financial barriers, so that a young person who's already built trust and respect and rapport with someone in their community doesn't need to make another appointment, get to somewhere else in town, meet with a stranger, retell their whole story, just so that they can have a few hundred or a couple $1,000s to remove their barriers for housing. So we're really trying to like lean into that community element piece of it, not only in the relationships between providers and young people, but also in like the network that this kind of a project can create, where we're creating a community project rather than simply just another project that exists in the community. So I mentioned at the beginning, there are two different projects that are operating on this centralized model and serving young people across Washington state, that We Are Building Changes are helping manage. I'm going to go over them really briefly, because we go way deep into all this in the certification training, but just to kind of give folks an idea. Um, um, the Homelessness Prevention and Diversion Fund has been in operation since 2020, originally in 4 communities. It's now currently accessible in 10 counties. And the purpose of this was really to support, to add to that capacity piece I named earlier, for those communities who are operating in the Functional Zero Initiative that was formerly referred to as the Anchor Community Initiative, is now under the banner of the Communities for Functional Zero. But for those communities who have committed to working towards and investigating what is it going to take for our community to be able to meet the needs of young people when they need it, and where homelessness can become rare, brief, and one time. So with that in mind, the eligibility here is aligned with that. So essentially, this project is set up to support those creative housing plans and removing the financial barriers for those for young people 12 through 24 who are experiencing unaccompanied homelessness in their communities. We use a really broad definition of homelessness. Really anyone who is unstable or unsafe, or doesn't have a fixed spot on a regular basis. So we really try to be super expansive on what that looks like. But with that goal of like, how can a project like this build that capacity and support that effort to reduce and then effectively end young adult homelessness in their communities. The other project that operates on this same centralized model is the Youth Diversion Infrastructure Project. And this is a project that came directly out of House Bill 1905 to support that effort to ensure that no young person is exiting a system of care into homelessness. And so we see a little bit of a difference in the way that this project's eligibility is set up, but the application of it is very similar and in line with that centralized model. And so communities that are operating this YDIP project are working with any young person who's under the age of 25, birth through 24. And then the unaccompanied piece isn't as strong of a issue here. So a project like this can work with the youth and young adult subpopulation just as easily as it can with the families system that's operating in the community. But that system of care experience is a big part of it, of course. So if they're not actively about to exit or haven't recently exited, we currently are supporting anyone who's got any past experience with the child welfare system, juvenile carceral system, and or behavioral health system. So we know that interactions with those systems can have long-lasting impacts on someone's housing stability. So even if they initially exit into some stable kind of housing solution, we know that that instability can come months, if not even years down the road. So right now we're working with anyone who is exiting or who has formerly exited any of these systems. And again, meeting that homelessness definition. But so long as they've had a holistic housing conversation with a community partner, and they've got a plan that's going to make sense for them. The last thing I'll say on these projects is that we have a pretty loose kind of way in which we determine what we can or can't use the funds for. So a lot of housing projects, it's usually like you can pay for application fees, rent, and refundable deposits and nothing else. But with a project like Diversion, we want to get really creative and we want to dwell in what's possible and what opportunities exist. And so the funds really can be used to remove any financial barrier so long as it directly results in a housing solution in 30 days. So we really like to keep this as open as we can. And it's not so much the what the money's for, it's the how and why is it resulting in housing stability and support in support of that young person's housing plan. So an example I like to use, we can pay for work boots if the purchase of those work boots is going to result in a housing solution. But if it's not going to result in a housing solution, we can't pay for work boots. So this is another area where it's super open and flexible, but it's also not super defined or clear, and we're living real deep in the gray area. But I mean, that's kind of the work we're in, is all the way in the gray area. So we're just pushing us further into what's going on and how can we make sure that communities have a resource that they need in order to address the needs of young people in their community. For anyone curious about where these projects operate and how to find out more, and if it's worth your time to attend a training or connect your folks in your network to trainings, this map here is set up to represent where HPDF and YDIP are operating respectively. So the counties that are filled in blue are communities that have HPDF only. King County has the YDIP project only. And then the communities you see here in green have both HPDF and YDIP. So we have different certification trainings for each community type that we're setting up. I am currently facilitating those most regularly, but I'm also working with our admins to be able to localize those trainings and take a higher degree of autonomy over that process and to be able to offer trainings at their own local level. So there's more to come on that. But so any of you who are working with young people or know or working with other community partners who are working with young people in these communities, please feel free to share my contact information with them, and I can make sure they get connected to any upcoming trainings and what that looks like. We're trying to do those pretty regularly, and I'm looking to have more trainings scheduled out by the end of the week this week. So there'll be more information to come. That felt super fast. I know that was a lot of information. So are there any questions or thoughts or anything that anyone had before I go off mic? Yeah, Rachel.
First of all, thank you so much for coming, Julius. Super appreciate you sharing this information. Do you think that it would be beneficial for every person that's working with a youth or a young adult in need of accessing those funds? Is it worth having every one of the personnel to have that certification, or is it worth just having one main key person for that training?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think depending on like the size of your team and whatnot, like it doesn't always make sense for an entire team. The training itself is usually anywhere from like 5 to 8 hours, depending on which training you go to. The training where we talk about both projects tends to take a little longer, obviously. Um, but so I think like over time, right, it makes the most sense for anyone who's working directly with young people to become certified themselves. When folks attend the training, they themselves are certified. So if they move to a different organization or a different community, like that certification follows with them. You don't lose it just because you got a different job or anything like that. So we don't tend to, and in that same kind of mindset, we don't tend to certify like orgs by so we certify individual providers. So I think yeah, whatever makes sense. um I would say that yes, it makes most sense for anyone who's working with young people over time in these communities to come and stop by and get certified themselves, so they don't have to lean too heavily on their teammates in order to submit requests on their behalf.
Awesome. Thank you, Julius.
Yeah, great. Well, oh, I left my email here. So if anyone has any questions or anything comes up in the future, like I said, if anyone wants to help get anyone connected to a certification training and whatnot, yeah, please feel free to shoot me an email, and I'm more than happy to talk more.
Great. Thank you so much. I want to echo what Rachel said. And yeah, I think this is really useful information. And I hope some individuals on this call reach out to you to get the training. All right. For those who joined a little bit late, we have changed the agenda around a little bit. That way we were able to have Julius. So again, thank you. I know you have a hard stop at 2, but I do want to introduce our next guest. I'm going to have our key speaker come and do the presentation now, and then we'll hear from our housing providers. But Katie, it's such an honor. Jim was supposed to introduce you, and I know he really looked forward to, but I'm really glad that I get to. Just talking with Katie the last couple of weeks and getting to know you and your story has just been very moving and touching. And so I'm so appreciative that you want to share your experience, strength, and hope with this group. Katie is a parent and she's an advocate, and she has a lot to say. So, with that, Katie, I'm going to ask you to come on and tell your story. So, thanks again so much.
Thank you, Sarah. It's an honor to be here. I haven't actually participated in meetings like this in probably about 4 years. And so I'm just trying to get caught up on like what's going on in the community and what the needs are. So I would love to have your feedback during, after my presentation, and let me know over the coming months if there's something that you would like me to share more information about. I'm happy to do that as far as my lived experience with the systems that we've interacted with. And I wanted to thank Julia so much for that presentation. It's really powerful to hear, that there is a training that's focusing on looking at what young people have as far as their community resources that are already available to them. As you'll see from what I'm about to share, that's something that's really close to my heart. Is like, these young people might actually have allies within their own community. And it's super important to us that to like not cut out people that actually could be there to support young people through their processes, because that's a huge resource that they need to continue to have access to, and it shouldn't be like shunned. So first, what I'm going to do is share a video, and this is kind of by way of introduction to my story and to what I'm going to share. So I'm going to give you a little fair warning. It's pretty emotionally intense, but I'm just going to start with that video. make sure I can figure out how to do it. Just one second. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen here. And this is, so I'll just let you guys watch this video and then I'll do a little short presentation and then we can talk about any questions or thoughts that you might have as far as what would be useful going forward. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not the right clip. Let me start over. Oh, geez. I thought that I had downloaded the right one, and that's definitely not it. Gosh. 1 second, you guys. I'm so sorry. Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
We can see it.
Yep. Okay. This is what I meant to share.
It's the same video that's up though, if you queued up another one.
Okay. Just 1 second. Let me see what I'm doing here.
Yeah, and don't worry, you've got time.
Okay. I'm gonna get out of here. Okay. Okay, I see what I did. 1 second. I'm like
Well,
having
Katie
some
is getting
technical.
the video ready. This is Yvonne Monique, in case some of you, I just want to invite everyone, if you're able to just focus. We have someone with lived experience, and I really want to honor just the expertise that you're bringing, Katie, and that this is an opportunity for us to just take a moment and to really connect in a meaningful way with somebody who's willing to share their experience, strength, and hope with us. So as a person with lived experience, I always feel like it's such a gift when anybody brings anything. I don't want to discredit the speaker who spoke before, but to really just take a moment, if you're able, to just really focus on this incredible gift that Katie is bringing us.
Thank you so much. That was really sweet of you, Yvonne Monique. Okay, I have it correct now. I guess I should have checked my video links before I started. Okay, so this is the video I wanted to share, and I'll just start with this as an introduction to my story.
And there's no volume.
Yeah, Katie, I was sorry, I'm managing technology issues on my side as well. We cannot hear
What
the
was that?
video. I said we actually cannot hear the video, but I
Right.
I want to take away any pressure of playing the video, and just in case the volume is not working on your side, because I can also send this out after you talk, and I'm sure everybody will watch it.
I'm sorry, Sarah. It's
No.
the same thing I did last time.
You're fine.
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry, guys. Thank you for bearing with me. I'm like,
Katie, we have time. We have till 2:30, so don't worry. Okay.
Okay, so part of what I'm experiencing right now is that, like, I'll just share that I am like, this is difficult. It's triggering for me to do this. So I feel like I'm stumbling a bit because of that, but I definitely do want to share this. So can you see this with it says Jaden Forever on the front? Okay. All right. So now I'm going to try to do it. Tell me if you can hear it.
It's for your existence.
Okay.
For receiving yourself like a palm full of soft lavender flowers. Raise up your fists like caution signs and tell them we are coming. When they are not ready for your power and they are stupid enough to call it bitter, wait for their egos to sting. When your smile makes them itch because it pours out beyond your mouth and into your eyes, tell them we want our heaven back. And if they tell you that your body cannot be loved, remind them that you were built out of a pain and wound sharp enough to cut down. And you're not afraid to use it. That you are the light at the end of the tunnel that you could not see. You are a storm that birthed the most divine rainbow.
This is why public events such as this are so important. around. More people than you realize can relate to these experiences, but these stories can often remain in the shadows until you give them space to come into the light. This event and the value of coming together as a community, connection to others is what makes the difference. This ideal was vitally important to the most valuable person in my life journey, my forever 19-year-old son, Jaden. Jaden may not be here in his physical form, but he's certainly here. I am convinced that a part of Jaden's purpose in his life was to open me up to my purpose and to my awakening. So it is with this dichotomy of broken hearts and joyful motivation that we are drawn together this evening to honor him and to begin to build a legacy that he would be proud of.
We're here tonight in honor of Jaden and carrying his legacy through Jaden's Community Support Fund. It's an honor being a part of this and seeing it unfold and prosper into something that we hope can help many people in the future, specifically youth and young adults struggling to find their footing and a healthy way of living, like Jaden and myself have experienced many times in the past.
We're hosting this event to announce the beginning of our Community Support Fund that we started in Jaden's honor. My son attended this school, the Recovery High School, and unfortunately, he passed away from an overdose in 2021. So we've, fought for some money to put into this fund. And what we're going to do with that is give back to the community that in my son's honor, things that you would be proud of, just to honor my son's legacy.
It really feels like yesterday that Jaden left us. So it's kind of awkward, surreal feeling, but I'm also feeling excited that we're able to create a legacy in his name and that other young people will get support to get healthy. He was like one of my children, I loved him deeply.
He had the craziest laugh. I have so many videos of his laugh. It was like a childlike laugh still, like he just had a huge heart. He really cared. He cared about people, about helping them, about making them feel less alone. And when he was going through his own struggles, he still showed up for everybody he loved.
My brother was amazing. My brother was hilarious. My brother was resilient. My big brother had made sure that no one was ever going to hurt me. Even in his struggle, even when he was feeling lost, he was still trying to protect me. This fundraiser isn't just about raising money. It's about honoring a boy who gave everything, even when he had nothing left for himself. It's about making sure that no other family has to go through what mine has gone through. No one should feel alone in their fight. No one should feel like they have to protect everyone else while carrying their own pain in silence.
And I want people to realize how important it is to have the funding to be able to send a kid to treatment or have a school like this, because this school did help me a lot. And I think that my life would have turned out very differently if it wasn't for the school. It really helps kids stay sober and graduate, because I know without this school, I wouldn't have graduated.
He was a huge personality, both in this school and in the local recovery community. He's very much alive with us. His spirit is here within the school. The school has been around for about 10 years. It's one of 43 recovery high schools in the country, and is all for students that are in pursuit of sobriety. They're in recovery from addiction and mental health challenges, and they are not only surviving addiction, but they come through here and they thrive in recovery. So they get back.
I feel like we need to care for each other more as a community, especially Black and brown people. I hope that people here, regardless of their skin tone, leave feeling like they want to care for their community. Your support means the world. Your love, your generosity. It's the kind of thing that would have made Jaden smile, even in his hardest moments. And if you're thinking about donating, just know it's not just money. It's us showing up for each other. It's us showing Jaden that we're here. We're still here. And we're going to keep fighting for him and for all of us.
Okay. Well, thank you for watching that. And I just want to thank a couple people that obviously shared their own stories as well, and Converge Media that created that video for us. So this was an event that we hosted in May, that you saw Jim there with us, and it's kind of how I reconnected to Jim and to this community and wanted to kind of give back. It's been 4 years since my son passed, and I finally feel like I have something to share and to give. So thank you for having me here today. And I just wanted to give you guys just a little bit more information before I open it up to some questions. So I'm going to share my screen again. And if anybody is interested in having that video or would like to share it or wants to hear more about the community support fund that we have set up in Jaden's honor, I'm happy to put those links in the chat as well if you want to share that video or watch it. I see that there is some stuff in the chat already, so I'll check on that. But look, I just wanted to share a little bit more about kind of the process that I went through with my son, and about the 5 years prior to his unfortunate passing. And the reason this is relevant to this committee is that my son was discharged from a treatment program after having 10 weeks of sobriety. He had given up his housing before going into that treatment program in April of 2021. And after 10 weeks of, ups and downs, but overall very successful treatment, it was the longest period of sobriety that he had had in a couple of years. He was essentially discharged with no plan at all. He was dropped off at my doorstep. He hadn't been living with me prior, and he was very stressed out by that. Had we had time to reconnect to some of the resources, even that are being shared today, that would have been amazing. But because of the history that he'd experienced and like the amount of times he'd been kind of like rejected from different places and just sort of, discharged in a really similar way, probably at least 3 times, where he was like administratively discharged with no plan and no notice. So unfortunately that day, which was June 28th, 2021, you guys might remember it because it was 106 degrees that day in Seattle. Unfortunately, Jaden passed that same afternoon because his tolerance, of course, was decreased. He had been in treatment and sober for most of 10 weeks. And so he was very, anxious that day. And without my knowledge, he had like stepped out and purchased just 1 Percocet, and that he took, and it was a fatal dose of fentanyl. So I guess I'm sharing this really heart-wrenching story, and I know it can be like very triggering for some people as well. But the reason that it's relevant is because like there's no reason that Jaden should have just been discharged with no plan. That was beyond, just unsafe. It was absolutely like a dangerous situation that he was placed into without the proper planning and resources that could have been put into place. And that's why I appreciate what Julius shared, because Jaden had a huge community of people that loved him and that would have helped and that would have shown up if only those people had been like pulled in, right? So that's what I wanted to share. And I'm just going to show you guys a couple of slides here. Okay. So this is over the 5 years prior to my son passing. We basically, when I started talking to Sarah about this, we basically began by making like a list of all of the systems that I interacted with over those 5 years. And so I'm going to show you guys that list just for just to understand kind of the scope of what it looked like from a parent perspective. My son was loved and not, I guess, what would have been considered an unaccompanied minor. However, during parts of his journey, I was working with Jim at OHY. I was working with Kim Justice, talking about like the at-risk youth petition. And I was always so shocked to encounter people that were surprised to see me there, that were like, oh, you're a loving, supportive parent and your kid is an addict or is not staying in your home or not going to school. I really worked hard to kind of just try to start breaking down and dispelling that myth that like kids that are using or that are in distress or young people that are, you know, not staying in their homes, it's not because nobody cares about them. There are young people, and when I have this experience daily when I walk through the city and I see young people out on the streets, and the first thing that I think of is like, who is wondering where this kid is, or who is wondering where this young person is sleeping at night and is staying up all night worrying about them, like I was with my son. And honestly, it felt like many of the systems that we encountered shunned my assistance and pushed us apart. And it was very divisive and really difficult to navigate. And so I'm super excited to hear that people are exploring that and saying, like, where do young people have resources already in their community? Because I almost feel like that's partially responsible for what happened to Jaden, is that from this age, and that's why I'm sharing this picture, because Jaden is 13 in this photo. And this is the age that Washington's age of consent laws kicked in. And I would take my son at this age when he was having anxiety and talking about traumatic experiences that he had when he was visiting with his father, seeing domestic violence, being exposed to drug use as a younger kid before his father lost custody. He was this age when doctors and therapists would say, do you want your mom to leave the room? And would prescribe him medication that I was not allowed to manage. And that was sort of, it really like began this fracturing of our relationship where Jaden was essentially told, like, you don't have to have your mom involved. You don't have to listen to what she's saying, even though I was a loving, present parent. So I wanted to share this picture so you know what a 13-year-old looks like. And I mean, I know many of you do, but I want to make it clear, like, to a parent, this looks like my little baby. And I don't think that he was at an age where he was ready to take over 100% responsibility for his own mental health care. So I'm going to show you my list of of all of the systems that we were involved with, and if there's anything that stands out to you and you want me to talk more about in coming months, I'm happy to do so. But what I want you to keep in mind is these ideas that I'm coming from a perspective of a white woman in Seattle with socioeconomic status. I always had health insurance for my son. We always had stable housing. When he was using, he didn't always stay in our stable housing. He didn't really follow all the rules. And I do believe that that was exacerbated by a system that told him that, maybe his parents didn't have his best interest in mind. And in my case, that was untrue. So I always want to highlight the fact that, there are obviously people in our communities that have like less access to resources and have, maybe don't even speak English as a first language. So that's where my perspective is coming from. And then also some of the reasons that these systems, quote unquote, didn't work for us wasn't because they weren't good programs. It was because there was lack of continuity. And that's, people not getting paid enough to stay in a role as a therapist or as a case manager. And then we go back to the same agency and it would be completely different people and we'd have to start over from scratch. So, and then, like I've mentioned, kind of out of order here, is that the age of consent laws really, I know the intention of those laws is to protect and support youth who are in an abusive situation with their family of origin, but they also work in the inverse and they separate families who are supportive of their young people. So this is the list and the reason I'm sharing it like this is a chronological list of systems that Jaden and I encountered over 5 years. And you might notice that some of them are repeated because we did, like, for example, like law enforcement. We interacted with law enforcement a couple of different times throughout this process. He would get arrested for shoplifting or minor consumption. And so the reason that I'm showing it to you in this way is just so that you can kind of see the gravity of like what a family is going through in like a 5-year period. So this is from basically when Jaden was about 14 until he passed away when he was 19. So these are all of the agencies that we encountered, that we interacted with, that we sought help from, and many of them worked. And they worked for a very short period of time. And I'm not, purporting to have answers to this or to understand like what the solution is. But what I do know is that, being in a position where, you're basically like discredited as the parent, when you're trying so hard to help your kid is like so dispiriting. So I do really want to like encourage providers that are here to like consider that for your clients that are young people, is like who in their community is actually like a positive support. And Jim and I have talked about this so many times, is like how, if the age of consent laws were to be changed, like how would we even evaluate what a safe person is? But we have good providers, we have wise people that are working with young people, and I feel that many of you do know how to evaluate whether a parent or a, grandma or an uncle or somebody is a safe person that can be helpful and supportive to that kid. So that's kind of one of the main points I wanted to make. And then, I did want to just talk about, like, that's why you see things on my list here that are from Oregon or from Utah, because as a parent that's like desperate to get my kid some help, I did end up having to send him out of state to access services where he would actually be kept safe. And yeah, and I just want to say that, I intervened when things were like dire. This isn't a kid who was like smoking weed at parties. This is a kid who was like, other young people were calling me to say like, your son is like passed out on the bus and we can't help him or get him off the bus. And so in those instances, when I stepped in and sent him, out of state, it was literally to save his life. So, and then I got support from several different organizations, and I worked with Jim and I worked with Kim Justice at the OHY. And I also did mental health counseling for myself. And all of that actually did, Jaden was in recovery. Like relapse is part of recovery. So when he was 18 and barely 19 years old, and he decided like, okay, I need to get help, I need to go to treatment, that was because of this long process of work that we had put in. That was because of him going to like, one thing that stood out to me was like his wilderness experience. He spent 9 weeks in Utah, and that was a super healthy experience for him. And that's something that cost me $45,000 and that most people don't have access to. And the reason that we had to choose something like that is because there weren't safe facilities in Washington for Jaden to get treatment and to, be encouraged to stay beyond like, do you feel like doing it today? No? Okay, bye. Like that was really, really difficult as a parent, that as soon as, my 16-year-old would say, I don't feel like doing drug treatment, or I don't want to go to the counselor, then like that was just off the radar and nobody was there providing support. And I know a lot of people in recovery, and I hear similar stories from them. Like one of the best periods of time was when Jaden was on probation. When he was, he had a probation officer that was, not just me telling him what to do. It was another system that was a stopping point for him to say, like, you need to go to school, you need to stay sober, you need to engage in these systems. So just some food for thought, that's like really an important piece from my perspective. And obviously the interagency Queen Anne, the recovery high school that you saw in that video, was a huge support for us. And yeah, so I just wanted to show you guys this list in case any of these pop out to you. We did do the at-risk youth petition, and I worked with Kim Justice to kind of make changes to the at-risk youth petition that would make it like less adversarial. So, that was a project that we were working on for a while, but that is kind of the theme of what I experienced, was that there's just a lot of adversity that seems to be like created within some of these systems, where yes, kids should have like rights and advocacy, and also we should look at who is advocating for them and who cares about them, and bring those people into the dynamic as well. So and so then I just wanted to throw out there, like, what if any of these topics are relevant to explore more. My intent is to be a resource about this lived experience. I know that a lot of parents aren't really willing to share in this way. And, I did participate in OHY before my son passed, but I think I was definitely hesitant to, like, I didn't want to share too much of like his personal life and his story. And now it's shifted, now that he's no longer with us. I really do need to just build a legacy in his name and make sure that, the things that happened for us are not things that other young people experience. So, and like I said earlier, when I see young people on the streets, and even the other day I was sitting with my friend and we saw a woman who was about our own age, and she was in a lot of distress and having a very difficult time, and a lot of people were just ignoring her. And the first thing that we both thought was like, if that was me, I would want my family or my friends to be able to like do something to intervene, to be able to help me and have, access to resources and the right to say, like, we love this person and we want to help them. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. I'm gonna look in the chat really quick because I noticed a lot of you guys were adding things there. And yeah, so that's what I wanted to share. So thank you for your time. I know that's kind of off the norm. So if anyone has any questions or comments, I'm open to that as well.
I'm switching between my audio that works and my audio that doesn't. Katie, thank you so much. I can tell I speak on behalf of everybody. Just watching that video again brought tears to my eyes, and just seeing the list of systems that you interacted with in a 5-year period. I know you and I talked about it a lot, but seeing it just feels daunting. But it's such a good reminder of what parents and what individuals and what young people, like what people are facing. And so just thank you again for bringing us all back to the real why of why we're all here today, and how do we create better systems and create return to community plans. I can't wait to present the actual return to community plan to this group that young people here helped with. And Katie, I can't wait for you to have input. So thank you. And the comments were full of people who had to leave early, but really, really appreciated it. So I want to thank you again. And with that, I am going to pass the meeting. I want to make sure we hear from our two SHB 1929 bridge housing providers. I know the updates may be short. Sierra, I know you're going to do the introduction, so I'm going to pass to you first.
Sierra Phillips, use she, her, they, them pronouns, and I'm a consultant with North Star Advocates. And I am going to go ahead and turn it over to the West Side agency that's going to be doing the programming on the West Side, which was Friends of Youth.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I just wanted to do a quick time check. How much time we scheduled to make sure that I am 5 minutes? All right, I'll make it quick within 5 minutes. And then I have here Harlan, our VP for operations, and then also my colleague Yvonne Monick, who is also partner and have been supporting this work both in the agency and also in the community. And my other colleagues, Brooke and Rachel, have to join another meeting, so we can't team tag while we have others there. Some of us stay here. So I will quickly just, because I like visualizing stuff, I'd like to see my screen quickly and just show you briefly where we are in this process. So as an agency, we do right now identify in providing the services in two of these housing programs that we have, the Friends of Youth. If you're familiar with our campus, you will see that once you walk into the streets, these two houses are right opposite one of our 24-hour facility sites in Kirkland. So the intention is to make sure that we're creating a space where young people can be really centered and then create a wraparound supportive system that centers around their needs and support their experience. And ensuring that we are approaching it not just only a one-size-fits-all, but having the young person lead, be centered around that process. And the goal is to make sure that, once somebody is exiting inpatient treatment, there is that aftercare support, to create a continuity of support so that they're not just dropping them off in the emergency shelter or somewhere that is not of right fit or right resource services. So the two units, each of them will provide like a 5-unit placement. And then right now, just ensuring that we are able to operate. So we have one of our units, which is our Bridgepoint Housing 2. So the name of our program is Bridgepoint. So Bridgepoint Housing 2 is ready. So we right now I'm creating the final touches to make sure that we're able to launch in. Our planned targeted date of launch in right now for client placement is mid-July. But to ensure that we are doing that real work that's needed. So so far we've been doing aggressive hiring the youth specialists who will be working in overnight and day shifts, and then hiring peer support counselors to really bring in that connectivity and also somebody that can support in that journey. And then so we're bridging in case management and housing navigations, somebody that will coordinate and create a wraparound system, ensuring that every other provider who is working with young person, we able to leverage those resources and then create a one solid team that centers around the need of young person and the young person leading that conversation and being the leader of that space. So updates from our end right now, facilities spaces. As I said, our unit 1 will be ready, unit 2 will be ready, ready, and client's placement right now scheduled for mid-July. And unit 2 will be ready sometime after that, because we're going through the permitting, and so most of those things are externalities that is beyond our control at the city level. But to ensure that we are responding to an immediate critical need, we didn't want to wait until both units are available. We wanted to make sure that we are doing what we can do right now, and so that at least we're able to provide quality services for young people. And once unit 1 is ready, that becomes available as well. So pretty much on unit two, facilities, beds are in there already. Mattresses have been ordered, pillows, hygiene kits, and all the things have been ordered, and it should be arriving within this week or next week. Common areas, we have also ensured that we order the furnitures and also creating a very therapeutic healing space that young people can identify with and feel home. And then we have also ordered, and then the office equipments are already on site, and we're just making sure we work on the assembling as well for those things. And then based on security and compliance, Friends of Youth is a COA accredited agency. So we have our smoke detectors, fire extinguishers, and all those supplies that we need to make sure that we are meeting safety and compliance standards and expectations. And then sanitation and hygiene. So once our facilities team do all that work is needed right now in the building, we will have one more run on cleaning and making sure that it is a space that we feel comfortable with and a space that we would love to have our family members in if they were clients. So making sure that we are not lowering the standards or the expectations. And one thing that really guides this work at Friends of Youth, as I hear Paul, our CEO, says, at the bridge housing point, we are not just only offering a place to stay, we are building a cycle of care around young people, centering their voice, walking alongside them to restore stability, open pathways to healing, and ensuring that housing, mental health resources, and hope are never out of reach for any young person that is coming in. It doesn't matter how they come to us. We find them, they find us, somebody send them our way. We just want to make sure that nothing but only good things happens to them. So this is the updates at Friends of Youth. So I wanted to allow for questions, but we are excited for the opportunity and looking forward to receiving the first referrals coming into the program, and we will be communicating with that process very soon. Yes, MJ?
Hello, everyone. I'm MJ, and I was just kind of curious if the participants there get to use the kitchen freely, or if there's going to be some oversight, or how that's going to look for fixing food.
It's similar to our TLP programs. There will be, of course, there will be staff available to supervise that. So part of the things that we are working as an agency is ensuring that we provide life skills, opportunities for young people, so that at least they will learn some of those traits on how to maintain a kitchen, how to make your own food, and those things will be approached as more of collaboration with, of course, staff supervision.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And I loved the presentation and actually seeing it. And I love the Bridgepoint, the name. So just so excited about what you guys are doing and how close it all is. With that, unless I want to make sure there are any other questions, because we are actually right on time. So I want to give everyone another moment or so to ask questions. But if there's not, I am going to hand the meeting back to MJ. You get to do the introduction, and so you're next on our agenda. And Mo, thank you. I know you're at a conference and I think hiding out in a room somewhere. So I just really want to thank you for showing up and giving such a great presentation and having your presence be here.
Hello, everyone. My name is MJ Negron, and I'm going to be passing it off to Excelsior with Lauren Zunker.
Thank you, MJ. I do want to take a moment and say, Katie, thank you so much for sharing today. That perspective, that experience is really critical to our work, and I really appreciate it. Thank you. Really connected with me. I don't have a long update today because we're still in progress, very similar to Friends of Youth in terms of site preparation, packaging some of our policies and procedures for HCA and North Star to review, and so that we can get feedback on those. In terms of transitioning to services, supportive services here at Excelsior, we've always wanted to get a home because we are running in a facility that isn't necessarily home set up like a house per se. And so we have some unexpected opportunities on the horizon to explore that right here on our campus, literally walking distance from that building. So if things go in that direction, that does shift a little bit of what we're doing. So I'll have to shift gears just slightly, but I wanted to share that because it's exciting to me. And has impact on this program. So I don't have anything more specific. We're doing staffing and hiring, site preparation, policy and procedure. If there's any questions, I'm here to answer those. So.
Great, Lauren. Thank you so much. And I know Mo had to jump off, but I also just want to say we have officially had our first meeting with both agencies and healthcare authority, and we're also going to be meeting tomorrow, and then having a lived experience advisory panel with young people from this group that will also be helping shape a lot of ideas and just some dialogue on some of the tensions and items that are going to be really important for these programs. So I really want to thank Lauren and Mo and the Friends of Youth team for showing up to do this work and being curious and interested and really valuing youth and young adult experiences. There's a reason why both of these providers were selected. They really are experts in what they do. And so it's really inspiring and exciting to be at this point, listening that doors are going to be open maybe mid-July to August. So I just want to thank all the providers. And really with that, it's shocking. We actually might end a little bit early, which often does not happen with our meetings, but I do want to make sure that we leave any time for community updates that any of our providers or agencies may have, or last minute questions. Okay. Well, with that, then I'm going to thank all of you. We will have a meeting next month in July, and it will most likely be a policy meeting with quite a few different legislators and really highlighting the houses. So just kind of earmark that for next month, and you will be hearing from me once all of the video recording is complete. So I hope we see you all next month, and I hope everyone's enjoying the sun. All right, Katie, again, thank you so much. All right, bye, everyone.